It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, what is going on?
I'm home. I still don't know what day or time it is, and the Saturday game not helping that, but I'm figuring it out. We're just moving along here. It's Tuesday, but it felt like Wednesday because the Steelers practice today, and it also feels like it's still Saturday because I still haven't. I'm in the wrong time zone.
What a schedule the Steelers have had this year, huh?
I gotta say, I did it differently coming back from LA and Vegas. I stayed until Monday night and then flew the red eye back Monday night from LA and Vegas when I went there. And I think I like that plan a lot better. I think going forward, that's going to be the plan. Anybody has any time zone hopping tips? Well, look, I don't think we have to do this next year. Do we have a West Coast game on the schedule next year? I don't. There's one.
The Chargers come here. Yeah.
Nothing. Denver. So not quite all the way to the West Coast, but there is one out that way. All right. We still got lots to talk about in the 2023 season. Let's get to that.
All right. Well, Alan, it's Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024, 4:40 p.m. And we're going to talk about quarterbacks because that is still the hot topic, whether it should be or shouldn't be. It's kind of what you wanted to touch on today was why should it not be this big of a deal that's being made about it?
Yeah, so I guess the big thing since we talked last, we kind of touched on it yesterday, right? Was this story that Kenny Pickett had turned down the opportunity to dress against the Seahawks, and now I feel very confident that I know really mostly what happened here, and so I just kind of want to run down what we've reported, what other people reported, what I believe to be true, what I know to be true, and what Kenny Pickett said today, and then let's talk about it. So, Kenny Pickett was medically cleared late last week. At that point that he was medically cleared, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers coaching and training staff had decided that Kenny Pickett had not played enough in practice that week to dress as either the starter or the backup. And so at that point, the question became, would he play as a number 3? And our reporting, which was spearheaded by Derek Bell, while I was flying home from Seattle yesterday, and it was quite a nerve-wracking flight as I was, texting back and forth with the team trying to get this taken care of, that, the leading reason that Kenny Pickett did not dress as the third quarterback was that he did not want to. I did not and do not didn't want to speculate about why, didn't want to make a big deal about it why, but I felt like that was a significant unanswered question from the weekend that I didn't think we got a satisfactory answer from Mike Tomlin. When I asked him point blank after the game, he said it was because Kenny didn't get enough practice reps. Well, that might make sense for why Kenny Pickett would be behind Mitch Trubisky in the pecking order, but it makes zero sense as to why Kenny Pickett would not be dressed. As long as Kenny was healthy enough to be an upgrade over a position player throwing passes, then there was no reason for him to not be dressed from a team perspective. And then Mike Tomlin said yesterday, and Kenny Pickett reiterated today, that they're extremely confident that he will be healthy enough to practice this week. And in fact, he was a full participant in practice this week, 24 hours later after the game. So it's not like he was so unhealthy that he would not have been able to perform as an emergency quarterback. This was clearly and obviously a choice. And when we talked to Kenny today, he pushed back on some reports that had said he turned down the opportunity to be the backup, the number 2 quarterback. That is not what we wrote. I believe that is what Mark Madden of 105.9 said, and I believe perhaps others did as well. I don't know. We wrote what I just said, that he did not want to be the number 3 quarterback. Now, Pickett didn't directly explain himself after that, right? It kind of gets reading tea leaves here. But there's a quote from Kenny from his availability today that I want to read here because I think it goes a long way to sort of establishing the why for what we reported. It's very hard when you're reporting from the outside to ever say why someone does something, right? I mean, it's easy to say, hey, this happened, right? Like there are multiple people that would be aware that something happened. Why someone does something I think that's pretty nebulous unless you've spoken to the person. And so here's the quote that I thought was very illuminating to me from Kenny today. Guys at this level, you can do things to get you through games. There's a process of getting through games where your health is not ideal. There's things you do. So if that needed to be the case, I could do those things. The trainers and coaches didn't see a point in me doing that if I was not starting. Now, Kenny is ascribing this to the trainers and coaches. This is not what we reported, but it sure sounds to me like Kenny was cleared medically to play, but maybe we're talking about taking a shot, a painkiller. Maybe we're talking about an elaborate process to get him ready to play in a game medically that he and or the team, I suppose, did not feel was worth going through simply to just be an emergency quarterback. And I feel like that is why the second part of this, and Dana Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports reported yesterday, this isn't a big deal. There's no animosity from the team to Kenny Pickett. I couldn't confirm that yesterday, but I did not get that sense when I was in Seattle. I also did not get that sense again today. It does not feel like anyone, either teammates or the Steelers, brass, are upset with Kenny Pickett about this decision. And if he had just said, no thanks, I'm too good to be Mason Rudolph's backup, there is no way that would have ever happened, right? That is not an acceptable response from any player on the team. However, no thanks, I don't want to take a painkiller to be the number 3 quarterback, I think is a stance that, while maybe hurt the team slightly, I think there's a stance that there's more respect for, right? And there's more understanding for. And I think that's why there does not seem like this is a big deal. Like I wanted to write about it. I felt like it was important for us to write about, but I feel like the whole world has already talked about this more than it needed to talk about. But I wanted to get the facts and what I think in one place. And honestly, I was like tempted to write this as a column, and I don't want to write any more about it. I feel like we've kind of already made too big of a deal of it, and I want to let it go to bed. But I figured the podcast here would be a good place to put those facts in order for people. And I wanted to get your thoughts as well.
Well, the thing that never crossed my mind was like a different element to it, right? Like you mentioned, like the painkiller thing would have never have crossed my mind in terms of like, if that happens, then yeah, he would be cleared to play. I just kind of thought it was a situation where he didn't want to dress if he wasn't going to be the starter. That's kind of the way that it seemed on the surface. But that makes a lot more sense. And to that point of it not being that big of a deal, we're not sitting here talking about him all of a sudden being the number 2 healthy now, if that's the case, right? Like he would be in the doghouse even more than he was if they weren't okay with that being the case last week.
Right. There's no way he would be. He and Mike Tomlin both said that he is going to be the number 2 quarterback this week. And that would not be first of all, if he didn't want to be the number 2 quarterback last week, what would have changed? I don't know. Like, why would he want to this week suddenly? And then, the second part is that why would the team want him to be if he had just done that? That just doesn't track. And so I think there was some sensationalism in some of the reporting from other outlets. And I think that was probably harmful. And I think that's a lot of what prompted the response that you got from Kenny Pickett. But I feel pretty strongly that we got the story right, and that, this happened. It happened the way I explained it, and I don't really think it's a big deal.
Great, because it's Ravens week. So just as we all would like to move on, the team certainly has to move on. They cannot keep harping on this issue. They would have liked to have kept it internal, I'm sure, and not even had to discuss this.
I was told today that there was a level of anger that this was not kept internal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Same.
Also, it's a good way to know that it's true. Also, when they're mad, it gets out. That's usually
last thing.
Usually a dead ringer.
I just wanted to ask a question before we move on, because you mentioned yesterday about it. You said you were going to reach out to his agent. Did anything ever come of that?
No, I never heard back from his agent yesterday, and
okay.
I think that's there were several people, close to Kenny that I reached out to that I felt like if this was not true would have wanted to tell me, hey, that's not true. Don't write that. And nobody did. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Alan, let's hope that this is put to rest. Let's move on. Because like you mentioned, Kenny Pickett, full participant in practice, but do want to go through some of the other injuries that they still have on their injury report. So what can you tell us about the Steelers' practice participation as the week opens up?
Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick, DNP, but was running again. And I think maybe I've got like a little bit of hope that he comes back. And Landon Roberts, DNP also. Man, that one just feels fetched. I mean, he's so tough. I don't want to count the guy out. But it seems less likely, right? I mean, that injury at that position, if you have a knee injury and you're running on it, I mean, I think we have a tangible sign that you're coming closer to a return in a way that we're not going to get from a pec injury from a linebacker when they're not really hitting in practice. Trenton Thompson, the same thing, was limited in practice today, but with a neck injury, a stinger, like his big thing is going to be being cleared for contact, which as of Friday, he said he was not, and, didn't think that he would get that clearance this week either. So Mike Tomlin kind of left the door open for all three of those players. I think I would say Minkah, E-Rob, Trent, in order of maybe my level of optimism, but I'm not sure I'm real high on any of them being able to come back. Rest of the injury report is guys that are going to play, guys that have been playing through things. Isaac Seumalo, Cam Hayward, Najee Harris, they're fine. TJ Watt, by the way, left the game and it was not even on the injury report, so that's a very good sign. Joey Porter Jr.
Team MVP TJ Watt has announced today. To no surprise of anybody.
Actually, I read after the Steelers voted for team MVP that Pro Football Focus came out and said that Myles Garrett was actually the Steelers MVP this season because of his advanced pass rush win rate. They just had to give it to him over TJ Watt.
I should have known where you were going with that, but I didn't until it finally got there and landed. Trenton Thompson basically all confirmed like last week that he wasn't going to play in the finale anyway, right? So I mean, it's really just the hope if they get in the playoffs, we see him.
Yeah.
So, okay, well there we go with the injury stuff. Alan, we did get a couple questions that I think we're gonna be able to expand upon what they were. We actually shout out to everybody that got involved in yesterday's episode because it was blowing up on the YouTube. One comment that came in, deal with it, which by the way, I like it. Not deal with it, deal with it.
This guy's apparently a big fan of Picklesburg. He's very into it.
I feel like fits right in Pittsburgh. Yeah. I think a lot of people are that way. Said people be getting it backwards. Our run game was opened up due to Mason and his passing. It started in Cincy, got better in Seattle. It was not the other way around. Mason's passing, using all the field, has softened defenses and opened up the run, which in turn makes it easier to pass. Complementary football. People need to start giving Rudolph his rightful props.
Well, the process that our pickle fan friend has laid out here is correct, right? You can open up the running game with the passing and make teams play more cover two and then get lighter boxes. In fact, Najee Harris talked about that last week. But that didn't happen in this game. It didn't happen the last game either. Both of these teams played overwhelmingly against the Steelers with loaded boxes, 8 and 9 guys in the box, and let Mason Rudolph beat them. Now, at some point, if he keeps doing it, they will get that level of respect from defenses, and they will start to ease up on the running game. But, go watch the game again. Go count the boxes. Go see where the safety is in the middle of the field. That's not what happened against the Seahawks. The Steelers ran the ball against a loaded box and ran it well. And that's why I spent a lot of time in the postgame talking about that running game because it was impressive. And the other thing is the Steelers also ran a lot of under center and they ran out a lot of heavy. They ran 2 and 3 tight ends. So they ran personnel packages that were practically inviting heavy boxes. They were basically shouting across the line, "We're running it. Come stop us." And then they did it anyway. It didn't have anything to do with Mason Rudolph, and look, Mason Rudolph has played well. I don't think there's any. The process that is being described there is plausible to happen based on the results. It just hasn't yet. It might this week. Especially because I think if we look at these Baltimore Ravens and I start to look at maybe players that if I'm John Harbaugh, I want to leave in my pocket. And, Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey have both been banged up. And so I might want to put those guys away. So it might be a kind of JV version of the Baltimore secondary that they might want to give some more help to. And so I can see that process happening if Mason Rudolph continues to play as well as he does, and very specifically continues to hit deep balls, although he really only had one in this game, but it was a good one, as frequently as he has and the high percentage he has. That will happen if they keep doing it, but it hasn't happened yet. And so I think the credit for the beating the Seahawks rightfully belongs to Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, the offensive line, the tight ends, because they blocked their butts off, and the game plan from Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan that I think we talked yesterday, not only zeroed in on a weakness for Seattle, but was a gutsy call to go away so strongly from what had been working to something else to make it happen. And so, I think that's, if we're talking about the Seahawks game, they were if the Seahawks could have put the 12th man out of the stands in the box, that didn't have been in the box too. Like everybody was in the box. There was no lightening of the box for Najee Harris. Almost every play was after contact. It was just bully ball from the offensive line and the running backs.
You saying that reminded me, this is not at all related to football, but I had to ask how, because that's one of the more intimidating away venues. How do you feel like Steelers fans showed up in Seattle? Was it noticeable at all?
There were more Steelers fans than I thought there would be. They were loud. It was not like LA or Vegas where it was just like a takeover, but that's a different kind of stadium, a different kind of vibe, right? I mean, like Vegas, it's just like there's no fans, right? There's no big. I mean, Seattle is. I thought I was really impressed by the city, the people, the stadium, the fan culture. I thought it was awesome. Like, if you want to go to a road Steelers game, I understand it won't happen again for probably 8 more years. So, like, this is a dumb suggestion, but like, that's a good one, man. That's a cool place. And the whole lower bowl stood almost the entire game. The fans were into it. They were loud. What a very cool environment. I thought, maybe it was like 20%, 25% Steelers fans. It wasn't some big, huge number, but they made their presence felt as well. And you got the good Muth chant when he finally caught a pass. I was having a good day, I felt like, in my live tweeting of I called that one a Sasquatch sighting. If you haven't seen Pat lately, he's kind of filled in the beard a little bit. And also he's been missing from the offensive game plan. And so I thought that was pretty funny. When he was, actually, isn't Pat Freiermuth our next question?
I was going to say,
segueing like professionals today. Yes.
So Berg Sports Fan, who I feel like has been a regular commenter on the channel, said, "Hey guys, notice the difference. I don't know if it's just me or Pat Freiermuth seems to be blocking better as the season has gone on, both run and pass blocking when called upon. Is this a technique thing, just more practice? What exactly has gone into this?"
So this is hilarious because in the locker room today, Brian Batko of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette asked Pat Freiermuth almost this exact verbatim question.
This is Brian Batko on the YouTube. Yeah.
Berg Sports Fan is Brian Batko. Oh, that's very possible. I've never seen them in the same place at the same time. So there you go. And Pat Freiermuth basically said it's because he's healthy now. He was dealing with a hamstring injury for a lot of the season. I'm not necessarily sure I buy that answer. I didn't think he was very good before he was hurt at the early part of the season, but I don't know. I do think he's blocking better. I think I think it's hard to, if Pat's not going to play along, ascribe, a cause to it, right? I mean, I don't know. I did suggest to him that maybe it's just the beard, that he looks scarier.
More grizzled.
That is why people just want to get away from him. They just see this wild man looking guy, and they're just like, I'm blocked. Okay, leave me alone. But it's dramatic. I feel like there were times earlier this year where he looked like a player that did not want to block, and I have not seen any of that recently. And sometimes looks can be deceiving, but it sure feels like a guy that's really bought in and is dedicated to what he's doing right now, even though he's not getting the football. And for an offense that I think we kind of rightfully suspected might have some seriously selfish elements to it over the last few weeks, I think it's pretty good to see a guy that talented who probably is right to want the ball more than he's gotten it, embrace blocking to that degree with this amount of success. I mean, he was a key part of what they did in the running game. It was not Najee Harris said after the game that they gave the game ball to the offensive line and the tight ends protested. They felt like they deserved it too for their blocking. And you know what? I'm not going to say they were wrong either. They did a very nice job.
Yeah, well, okay, so I think that this has been, it's not just one isolated instance, but the one that really caught my eye was where I think you can give credit to every single player that was blocking on this play. The one where Najee looks like he's about to be held up, and then they just move the entire pile about 5 more yards into the end zone. But all 3 tight ends were on the field on that play. So, Connor Hayward as well, who we've talked about, his blocking as well. But how much credit should Alfredo Roberts get for bringing these guys along as blockers?
I think Alfredo needs to get some credit. I think the scheme and sort of just, figuring out what they had in Darnell Washington, I felt like his usage was a head scratcher, a good bit early in the year. Seems like they've really honed in on what makes him tick and what's a good way to use him. And then those guys are getting after it, man. I mean, I think that's 3 players that felt like they were needed to be a part of a winning solution for this team and really embrace the game plan. I think when you come out for your first play, 3 tight ends under center and you run the ball. And I think that really, to me, was just talking about that they were tipping their hand and the tight ends were a big part of it. And they said, bring it on. We want all the smoke. We're going to block you anyway. And they did. And actually, I think a couple of the offensive linemen in the post game did say that, like, hey, the tight ends deserve a lot of credit for this. So, I think maybe the tight ends have a point. See if we can get them in the end zone. I predicted that Darnell Washington would have a touchdown. And yeah. I don't know that picking up and carrying Najee Harris into the end zone is what I had envisioned, but it came close, right? It came close.
Yeah, I mean, I at least half. I'll give him a
half.
Also so had do that again.
He had an incredible solo block on Najee's earlier touchdown too. If you haven't seen the highlight of that one, go check it out because somebody gets moved about 6 yards in the space of a 1/10 of a second. It's impressive.
Alan, I actually have a question for you. This just popped in my mind, and I feel like the answer from the team is going to be cliche. You've probably heard this so many times over your course of covering the team, but without knowing what the Ravens' plan of attack is going to be for this week, with already having, the number 1 seed locked up, they can't do anything else, but they're going to have a bye. Like, do they sit their starters for 2 weeks? Do they it's unconventional, but do they kind of treat it like a preseason game where they play a little bit? Like, how do they approach this? And like from the Steelers' perspective too, how do you game plan for a team where you don't know what they're going to do?
Well, you can only bench so many guys, right? You can only have 7 scratches, and if you can have 5 from your 53, and that's how you get to 48, and then you can call 2 guys within practice squad. You can make it 7. So that's the most starters that they can sit down. So it can't be all of them. I think you try to look at the guys that you think are likely to be out, and I think like the guys that are banged up, and especially veteran guys that are banged up, like Marlon Humphrey. And Cal Hamilton is having a great year, banged up. I mean, that seems like that makes a lot of sense. I can't imagine Lamar Jackson is going to play significant reps in this game. I just can't. That feels like it would be malpractice if the Ravens sent him out there. From a game preparation standpoint, I think it really depends on the situation, right? Like the Ravens are very much a team that is built more on a game plan than personnel. Like we've seen a very consistent approach, demeanor, tactics, mindset from the Baltimore defense for 15 years. kind of regardless of who's in there, they always turn out to be the same team. And so, maybe if you're the left tackle and you're looking across at the Ravens depth chart this week, if you're Dan Moore and you're wondering, well, whose tendencies am I going to study this week? Am I really going to worry about Jadeveon Clowney, or is he going to be one of these older guys that sits, and should I spend more of my time, focusing on Tavius Robinson, who's a rookie outside linebacker, right? Like, I think you can worry about that. I just don't think there's going to be, in the big picture, a lot. This is not a team like, okay, if it was the Kansas City Chiefs and you're going to get, who is the Chiefs backup quarterback? It's like an old guy.
Is it Blaine Gabbert?
Rippin? Blaine Gabbert? Yeah, okay. Blaine Gabbert? Yeah. If you're going to get Blaine Gabbert instead of Patrick Mahomes, you'll be like, oh, this offense is going to be completely different. Like, there's going to be 100 things they do with Mahomes that they can't do with Gabbert. I don't really think – I mean, Tyler Huntley is not as good as Lamar Jackson, but I don't think there's any part of this Baltimore – Baltimore is very intentional about having backups that fit the skill sets of their starters. I think Huntley has as many wins over the Steelers as Jackson does, doesn't he? Like, I mean – like, I just think you go into it knowing that you're getting the Baltimore Ravens and you're going to deal with them the way that you've always dealt with them. And I don't really know that it makes a big, huge deal that they're going to sit some guys.
Well, obviously, like, Tyler Huntley's not an MVP candidate like Lamar Jackson, but in terms of the way they run the offense, sure. But we've kind of talked about this too, like, you mentioned every time we talk about the Ravens, the pieces, those interchange guys, they could bring guys in, bring guys out, and they all still basically do the exact same job. So that kind of allows the Steelers to obviously prepare the same way when you're looking at a team like that.
Yeah. I mean, some other guys, I think maybe if I was I'd be thinking about sitting down Roquan Smith. I mean, he's an older guy. He's really good. They don't have a lot of.
Did you mention Ronnie Stanley?
Yeah, Ronnie Stanley, right? Yeah, he's been banged up. Kevin Zeitler, the right guard, has been banged up as well. So both of those guys, are players that you could sit. OBJ, another older guy that I think maybe you want. And look, they don't have a lot of depth at running back. I don't know how much I would want to play Gus Edwards, right? I mean, if he feels like a guy they can't really afford to lose at this point. And there's levels of this too, right? Where there's like, oh, this guy's going to be scratched. And then maybe there's, well, Gus Edwards is going to dress, but Melvin Gordon's going to get the most carries of any of our running backs, and we'll see how it goes, and this is not like it's the Arizona Cardinals. Like, the Ravens really don't want to lose the Steelers. Like, even if they're not going to play all their starters, they're not going to roll over for the Steelers. Like, they are going to, whoever is dressed in purple and black is going to give 100% to win this game. Like, they are not going to just go away. They hate losing to the Steelers as much as the Steelers hate losing to them, maybe more. And I think, they're not going away lightly. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, think about it from the opposite side, right? Like, if the Steelers were the number one seed, had everything kind of locked up, you think the Ravens fans or Ravens team would be sitting there on the other side like, oh, they're just going to lay down for us. They got nothing to play for.
Now, the fans, that's a different story. You mentioned the fans. Like, I'm not sure how much home field advantage you're going to get for a January home game that means nothing, right? Like, you might be getting a JV effort from the Baltimore.
It means everything to the Steelers
for this one, right? I mean, like, I don't know. If I'm a Ravens season ticket holder, I'm trying to find a nephew or a cousin or something to be like, hey, you want to go to this one, buddy? I know you've been asking, and I don't want to freeze my butt off for a game that doesn't matter. I haven't seen a forecast, but I assume it's going to be something similar to what we've got going on here now, and that's not, necessarily the friendliest of conditions. So the Steelers might get a break in terms of just the environment not quite being what it normally is in Baltimore.
Honestly, that never crossed my mind either. So there we go. That'll be interesting to see as well. Alan, anything else?
No, I don't think so. I want to write and talk about things that are not so quarterbacky, to use the term of the week. You can look that one up if you don't understand the reference. Yes. It's forecast for Sunday, 45 and partly cloudy. Oh, wait, no, we're playing on Saturday. Sorry. 40, snow turning into rain. Yeah. I'm I'm skipping that one if I'm on the stance. This is a 2-hand warmer day for Steelers Now photographer Ed Thompson. That sounds brutal.
Well, Alan, you won't be skipping though. The fans might.
No, we'll be there, man. We already got a place booked for Saturday night in Baltimore. Me, Nick, and Ed be on the road. I'm excited about one more trip with the fellas, and maybe more. I'm trying to decide if I should book travel for Wild Card Weekend or wait. It's very up in the air right now. Could go to Kansas City, could go to Miami, could go to Buffalo. Obviously, don't have to book much for Buffalo, but flights to Kansas City are tough.
Well, other than at M&T Bank Stadium on Saturday, Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. That's it. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got Kenny Pickett's comments from this morning right up there, one video up.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments the exact same way that you guys did yesterday. We love to see it. Get us some questions. The comments don't always have to be, you guys love Kenny, you guys hate Mason. Like, maybe switch it up a little bit here and there. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, etc. You look like you were about to say something else.
No, I'm just laughing at your
Oh. Well, now I am also laughing, but we will end it on that note. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Steelers Afternoon Drive.